All right, hello everyone. So this is your lecture for this week. So I'm going to record a couple things that we talked about in class. Now, this morning I got up and I opened up Pro Tools and I was having problems with Melodyne. So I have sent them some emails dealing with licensing issues. So I'm going to skip Melodyne for now. And once I get that taken care of, I will make a separate video on Melodyne. Okay. So for now, though, I'm gonna cover a couple other things until we get to that point. I'm going to talk about tempo mapping. All right, some uh, tempo automation, how to draw in your tempo automation, how to use that. Going to talk about how to identify beats. All right, and how to use that and do that in your sessions and why we do that. Okay. I'm going to talk about beat detective, how to do that. Sample replacement, I'm going to show you how to do that using your tab to transient function. And then we're just going to go over a couple like session setup things, some organizational steps to help you with your mixes. Okay, so let me get started. First thing I want to talk about is your tempo mapping, how to really understand how tempo works in Pro Tools. Okay, so now what we have going on here, tempo mapping, it's a method for us to kind of predefine and visually see our session's tempo changes. Okay, very seldom do we have a session to where it's all like one tempo all the way through. Okay, especially if you're using live people. Okay, tempo ebbs and flows. That's okay. All right. We just need to understand the transition between the tempo changes. That's the big thing. Now, why do we do this? All right, we do this so that we can sync our audio to our MIDI. All right, now normally you are taught to MIDI's on a grid. It's very rigid. It's on a grid. That's the way MIDI works. Okay, and you are taught to quantize your audio to match your MIDI. But when you do that, you lose a lot of the naturalness, the actual like groove and feel, because MIDI's kind of stale, right? It's one of the biggest problems we have with MIDI. It's stale, okay? And so we do this tempo mapping so that it's the other way around. Instead of quantizing our audio to match our MIDI, we can tempo map our sessions so that our MIDI now locks into our audio and follows all of those very natural, subtle ebb and flows of our tempo, okay? Instead of locking in and quantizing our audio, we are now kind of unlocking our MIDI to match our audio. That's why we do this. It sounds much better, much more natural, but I'm going to show you because you probably don't know how to do it, or if you do, it's just a little bit of a refresher to help you, keep it fresh in your mind, all right? And so, like I say, whenever you're adding like virtual instruments or any kind of tempo synced effect, right? We do this so that it lines up with our pre-recorded live music, okay? Now, when we record, typically we record the drums first. And we do that hoping that they establish the tempo and the groove, all right? Fingers crossed, all right? And then what we do is that we then tempo map that performance, our drummers, and this allows the other players to follow that. We can also, in a practical context, tempo mapping enables us to create a very accurate click track, all right? Particularly when, like I say, your song features some tempo changes, okay? This is really, really helpful if you ever like get a hold of something, a piece of audio that was recorded without a click. We can tempo map it and actually get a working click track for everybody else to play along with. And it makes it much easier to overdub if you do this, okay? So let me show you a few things that's going on in Pro Tools. Let's start with the tempo ruler, okay? The tempo ruler in Pro Tools, it's a very quick and precise way to change your session tempo, okay? If we were to add a tempo change or just even set up a basic tempo, this is how we do it, okay? Let me show you first what the tempo ruler is. I was playing around in the session just a few minutes ago, So let me delete a couple things here. Very good. And now let me set this up. All right. Okay. I'm going to switch over and go to this desktop. Make sure, see if we can. There we go. So now you should be able to see Pro Tools in my session. All right. So what we're looking for up here, you see in the very top, you'll see it says tempo, and this is one of our rulers. This is your tempo ruler, okay? This is how we, if we want to follow tempo in our session, we need a tempo ruler, all right? Now, if you don't see this, there's a couple ways that we could do it. One is right here. You click on this little calendar icon, and it's right there. The default is not there. The default is not to have a tempo ruler, okay? But if you don't, you just click that and click there, opens it up. You can also go into View, Rulers, Tempo, right there, okay? That's how you would see your tempo ruler, all right? And like I say, if you want our session to follow any kind of tempo or anything like that, you have to have your tempo ruler and you have to have your conductor on. You see that? It looks like a little guy waving his arms around. That's your conductor track, okay? Now, when this is off, you'll notice if I turn this off, my session goes back to the default 124.4. All right, and you'll see my bar lines and everything change. I turn it back on, and it matches my preset 93 BPM. That's what the session's right around 93 BPM, right? So with that on, you'll see my tempo, my bars, and everything change, okay? Now, if you don't see the tempo ruler, all right, or the conductor up here, this is part of your MIDI controls window, all right? And it is right here. If you see this little drop down arrow, it's going to be right there. So you'll see it's gone now, all right? Just turn that back on and your conductor track will come back, all right? That's where that is if you don't see that, okay? Now, like I say, with that conductor off, your tempo is free to move wherever it wants, okay? It's not actually listening to your tempo markers. But with the conductor on, it will follow the tempo ruler, which is what you want when you're trying to sync MIDI with audio, okay? Now, to start off, you can set a starting tempo on this by double-clicking this little red diamond, all right? Now, sometimes it's usually all the way over here to the beginning of your track, and you'll see like half of a diamond. Doesn't matter, it's the same thing, okay? So if you double-click on it, it will give you this window, all right? And it's going to ask you about your tempo. What do you actually want it to be, okay? Now, it will prompt you to select your desired tempo for that location, all right, wherever the diamond is, all right? Now, if you want to do this, okay, if you want to add like a tempo change or something in your song, you can do it a couple different ways. You can click wherever you want your change to happen, and you'll see it move my cursor, okay? Then you can hit the plus. You see that little plus line right there in my tempo ruler? And it'll bring this up again. And you'll see that my location has changed. My location now matches wherever my cursor is, and I can change my BPM right there. I can just type in whatever I want it to be. That's how you would do tempo changes in your tempo ruler, okay? You can also control click. Hang on. Yeah, should be control click where you want the tempo change to happen. There it is. Okay. And it gives you the same window. So I just held down control and clicked in my tempo ruler. That's what did that. Okay. There. And it keeps coming up. All right. You can do it that way, or you can hit the little plus icon. All right. Same thing. All right. Now, if you do have this window open, let me show you a little trick here. All right, if you have this window open and say you don't know the BPM of your song, all right, you don't know, you can actually do a thing called tap tempo. And what that means is with this window open, you can start pressing the T button. Okay, I'm just hitting T over and over, whatever my beat is, my quarter note beat, and it'll give me my BPM. All right. That is called tap tempo. You can also do it like that. All right, little interesting thing. Now, let's talk more about this tempo ruler. Okay, like I say, you want to make sure that you see it. All right, if you don't, then it's not really going to help you. Once you get it up here, you want to expand it, and you expand it with this little arrow in the corner. All right, and you see it opens up, and now I actually see my tempo line. All right, that one right there, that green arrow, and you'll see that it's 93, okay, which is meant to match this. That is where it's matching right there. Okay, that's a good thing. Now, let's actually talk about how to automate tempo changes. All right, now the easiest way to draw in any kind of automation is with your pencil. Okay, let me actually pause this for a second. I'm going to go get something to drink real quick. I'll be right back. All right, so now, where was I? I was talking about the pencil, all right, drawing in some automating your tempo changes using your pencil, okay? Now, let me, screen sharing, okay. You should still be seeing the Pro Tools window, hopefully, yeah. Now, pencil is right here up at the top, okay? Now, you will notice things on here that there are different types of pencils, okay? If you use a little sub arrow, there are different types of how this pencil will draw. Let's just start with the freehand, okay? Now, when you're doing this, you can just draw in whatever you want to happen, and then boom, you'll get your automated changes, okay? Now, realistically, this is not the best, okay? But you can do this, all right? Now, a good thing about all of this, it's completely non-destructive. I can Command Z and it's all gone, all right? Now, realistically, freehand, not the best. Line is actually more of what we do so that we have gradual changes over time. See that? So you're going to get a slow decrease, all right, in our BPM, or we can add it, ramp it up, something like that. This is more like how we would actually play type idea, okay? And you'll notice that every one of these changes now has a corresponding tempo change above it. Do you see that, where it gives you the new BPM at that particular spot? All right, once again, all non-destructive, Command Z, get rid of all of it, go back to where we started, okay? Now, you'll notice some of these pencils, okay, we can't use them all. Now, notice how my pencil is yellow, looks like a normal number 2 pencil, right? Notice the color of the pencil, it's yellow, all right? That means we can use that particular option, all right? So freehand worked, line worked, triangle. Triangle, now look at my pencil. It's gray, okay? This means that Pro Tools is telling me that's a stupid idea. No, that's not how we use that option, okay? So it's not going to let me do it, all right? It just won't do it. Now, when you're doing this, you can also use your trimmer tool, okay? And like that, you see how it turns in that little staple thing? You can also do it like that. You select a point, it makes your 2 automation nodes, and then now with my trimmer tool, I can move that whole section like that. See that? You can also do your automation like that, all right? But this works fine if you're taking a whole section, just slowing it all down immediately, all right? You can do either way. They're both useful. I suggest using the pencil but the multi-tool right here is perfectly fine. All right. These are the big ways that we automate our tempo. All right. Pencil and the trimmer tool right there. Okay. Now, as you're going through here, let me show you this. There's a window called the tempo operations window. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but it's a very powerful and precise tool for helping you adjust your session tempos. Okay. And like I say, this provides a variety of powerful options. Okay. And I use it when there are multiple tempo changes in a session. Okay. Now, I recommend if you want to experiment with your tempos and really what you can do on a track, this is the way to go. All right, try it, try this, and you'll really like this window. How to get there? Go to the event menu, and you'll see tempo operations window. All right, what does this do? All right, this window will allow you to set up tempo changes just over time. Now, the first few options here are pretty simple. Okay, constant. This is, you can set the tempo to a constant BPM over a particular selected area. All right, you tell it start here, end there, at that tempo. There it is. Now you have this option here, preserve tempo after selection. So what this means is that I'm going to say like measure 3 to 6. I want it at 93. Well, if I leave this unchecked, it's going to leave the rest of the song at this tempo. All right, if I click this, it's going to go back to the tempo I had before I chose the selection. That's what that means. Okay, now like I say, a couple of these are pretty simple. All right, constant, you understand that one. All right, next on the list is linear. All right, so this is that line that I was talking about. All right, you can have it start at one tempo, slope up or down, and end at a different tempo wherever you like in the song. Start at 93, end at 104, something like that. Whatever you like. Okay, that's the way this one works. Same way, same option down here before or after your selection. Okay, but now the rest of these are a little bit more complicated. All right, let's start with parabolic. Now you will notice parabolic is basically the same idea as a linear line, but you can now add a bend to this tempo change. All right, you can either go up or down. All right, so this is going to tell you how fast or slowly you ramp up to that tempo change. So this starts a little bit slower and then speeds up as it gets closer, okay? Or vice versa. It's going to take off really fast and then kind of flatline as it approaches. See that? You have that option, okay? Next on the list, S-curve. Same idea, but now you can actually control the midpoint of the curvature, all right? You can actually shift that around, and in addition to my S curve. See that? So you get a little bit more of a play on how this one actually works. See that? A few more options. Gets a little bit more complicated. Like I say, this is really, really fun if you want to experiment with what tempo can do in your session. Okay? Now, as you go down, you see scale and stretch. Okay? And what these do, these will lengthen or shorten what you already have, okay? And these proportionally, you see the scale down here, like 100% or whatever, these proportionally change the tempo across a selected range, all right? But when you look at these two, same idea, there's the proportion, okay? These are probably the two I use the least, okay? And, you know, when you're dealing with things like scale, all right, what this does, instead of simply increasing or decreasing the tempo by a fixed amount, scaling will adjust your tempo according to the existing tempo map, which I'm going to show you here in a minute how to create. All right. And what this does, this ensures that the relative speed between the different sections remain consistent. Okay. And if you choose a specific portion of your session, scaling will only affect that session or that section of your session, okay? Everything else is left unchanged, okay? Now, What does this mean? So imagine you have a song with a section that gradually speeds up. Okay, think linear scope, right? But if you want to speed up the entire song, you can now select that speeding up section and use it as a scale function to determine how it relates to the rest of the song. Okay, so if you increase the overall tempo by 10%, say something for example, right? That scaling feature will ensure that the gradual speed increase within that smaller section also is proportional to the entire thing by increasing 10%. All right, it just gives you a bigger picture. Whereas if you did the line, like you just with the pencil, a line, boom, it's going to do that. But with this scale, you can now have it look at the entire thing, speed all of it, including the part that speeds up by a proportional 10%. Like I said, this gets it can get really, really complicated, but it's fun to experiment just to see what you get. Okay. Now, stretching, on the other hand, this one, this refers to how you alter the duration of an audio clip or region without changing its pitch. Okay. Pro Tools uses like an algorithm that actually analyzes and manipulates the audio's timing information. All right. And it'll allow you to change the tempo, same idea, okay? But time stretching is more related to pitch shifting, okay? It's a little bit different. We can pitch shift, all right? It's a different option, which you don't really need to worry about right now, but you can use pitch shift to change the frequency of audio, all right? You actually can change a perceived note based on tempo, all right? It's kind of like what the old, back in the 70s and stuff, when they used tape, okay, you could speed up or slow down tape and it would change the pitch. Well, Pro Tools can do that through pitch shifting, and that's where this stretch comes in, okay? Stretch can kind of give you the idea, but in such a way that you can manipulate the pitch on its own, okay? This is really useful if you're trying to align certain loops to a session tempo or if you're creating like rhythmic variations or things like that, trying to slow down or speed up sections of an audio, right? But like I say, this is probably the most complicated way to do it, so it's the way I do the least. There are ways around it, yeah. But like I say, all of these have this preserved tempo after selection, all right? So you have that option, okay? Either you want it to return to the original tempo once your section is complete, or you want to continue that last tempo. That's what that one does. All right. So there's the tempo operations window. Very, very useful. You should try it. You should experiment with this. Okay. Now let me switch my. Yep. Okay. Next, let's talk about identifying beats. How to actually create a tempo map. All right. Now, this is a method that doesn't use Beat Detective, which I'm going to show you here in a second, but I tend to use this alongside Beat Detective. Okay. Now, there are two ways to create this tempo map. The first method involves manually adding time changes while you're listening. Okay. And you got to be fast with it. It's tough. The second method uses what's called the tab to transient function. This is the way I recommend, until you really get used to it. And I recommend when you're doing this, what we're going to be doing is actually telling Pro Tools where is measure 1, where is measure 2, where is measure 3. Okay, we are going to tell Pro Tools this without it telling us where the grid should be based on a preset tempo. Okay. We're going to tell it where it is, and that's what we're doing. And I recommend, since we talked about most of our sessions start with our drummers setting the tempo and the groove, I recommend using either the kick track or the hi-hat track if they're counting off on the hi-hat. All right. I say that because this session I'm getting ready to show you uses the hi-hat for counting off. Okay, so I'm going to use that hi-hat track for this. All right. A few steps here. Okay. First thing you want to do is you want to put this in slip mode, okay, up here at the top. And you want to make sure that you turn off this last button right here, insertion follows playback. All right. If you hover your cursor, it should tell you, oh, now, insertion follows playback. You see that? That's the one all the way to the right out of those 4 buttons. Turn that off. All right. Now, the shortcut to do this for your tempo mapping is Command I. All right. And when you do this, we're going to start right here. The snare top. All right. Because this is my hi-hat. All right. There is no hi-hat track, but the bleed is on this track. So if I play this, I don't know if you can really hear that, but that's my hi-hat counting. All right, my hi-hat counting time. So that's what we're going to use to set up our first few measures here, just for me to show you how to do this. Okay. Now you can see, I'm going to move this fade a little bit out of the way. Okay. So if I put my cursor here, let me make this a little bit bigger so that we can actually see it. There's my hi-hat. Okay, these little clicks. See the little transients? Now I can click anywhere here. All right, and I'm going to hit my tab function, my tab button, and it will jump over that transient. Now to turn this on is right here. It's that first blue button. Make sure that is on, and that enables us to jump from transient to transient. Now that I know is measure 1. Okay, that's where the song starts. That's where he starts counting off. I'm going to call this measure 1. So now with my cursor right there on that transient, I'm going to hit Command I. And now the window that opens looks like this. Okay, and it's going to ask me, all right, my time signature 4/4, that's what it is. And then this is measure 1, which I put in there. I just typed in 1. All right, and now I'm going to hit OK, and that sets my tempo marker at that measure for measure 1. Okay, now you can see the beats 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can either click my tab to transient and it jumps through my beats. See that? And now right here is measure 2. I'm going to hit Command I. It's going to give me my same marker. Now you will see it's a little off now. Okay, so based on my initial tempo, okay, this tells me this is a little off. Well, I know it's measure 2. So I'm going to press 2, all right, and hit OK. Now you'll see my tempo ruler up here changing. You see that? Okay. And I'm going to continue the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then right here's measure 3. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Command I. I get my same window, and you'll notice that it's changing a little bit. This is because my tempo is ebb and flowing. Okay, it's changing. That's measure 3. Hit OK. Now let's do a couple more of these, just because I want you to see what's happening in my tempo ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's beat 1. Command I. Measure 4. 4. Okay. Now 2, 3, 4, and now measure 1. Okay, or beat 1. Command I. Measure 5. See it? And see now my tempo ruler up here is actually showing me how my tempo is kind of evening out based on my drummer. All right, so 2, 3, 4, 1. All right, Command I. This is measure 6. There we go. And now what I'm starting to get is an actual tempo map of all of my measures as it goes. Okay, now what I recommend, okay, is if you can do every measure, all right, you're going to get a great tempo map. All right, but what I would like to see, and I want you to do this for your midterm and your final. This is a very, very useful thing once you get in the habit of doing it for all of your sessions, okay? I would like to see a minimum of 4 measures, every 4 measures, okay? So I'm going to know that, so I measure 6, 1 measure, 2 measure, 3 measure, 4 measure. So somewhere around here is going to be my beat 1 of that 4th measure. So if I look at it, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be 7, 8. All right, 2, 3, 4, 9, 2, 3, 4. See that? Here's going to be measure 10, and then measure 11 is going to be somewhere through here. So as you can see, it is actually a little off, okay? And you would double check that by listening and actually counting, all right? Now, as this plays, if you're doing it while it plays, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what I just did is as it was playing, this was getting ready. This is going to be my beat 1. That right there, that transient right there. So right before it, I knew it was coming. I hit my down arrow. And what it did is it dropped my cursor right there. Now I can hit tab 1 time and it's going to take me to my cursor. And you can see right here, it's just a little off. Now this is measure 11. Boom. There's my new tempo marker. There's measure 11. You see that? So you can hit that down arrow while it's playing to place a cursor. All right. Now, when you're doing this, when you're trying to use this tab to transient type of idea, you want to be as precise as possible. Okay. And so you want that cursor to fall right where the first beat is. And then hit that down arrow. Okay. It's going to jump right before it. Hit the tab to transient. It's going to move your cursor to as close as possible to that desired beat 1. Okay. Then, like I say, hit your Command I, set your measure number, yeah, and then you would just use your tab to transient to move on to the next bar and repeat the steps. All right. As you go through your song, you will eventually have a tempo map with tempo events for each bar, or like I say, a minimum every 4 bars. Okay. And if you know the music, if you actually listen to the song a few times, and you can look at a waveform like I'm doing here with the hi-hat and see the bars and the beat points, you can very quickly work through a song, okay? And so this is how you tempo map. And when you add any kind of MIDI to your session, this is what your MIDI listens to, okay? This is how it lines up and follows the grid. This is how you get MIDI to sync up with audio instead of audio syncing up with MIDI, okay? Very, very useful thing to be able to do, okay? Especially if you're working, most music nowadays has both audio and MIDI in it, so you need to know how to put these two together. This is how you do it, okay? All right, moving on. So there's our tempo mapping, tempo automation, and how to identify beats, okay? So there's the first 3 topics. So moving on, let me talk a little bit about Beat Detective, okay? Now, what is Beat Detective? All right, Beat Detective is a thing that actually looks at rhythm and really works to help you quantize and just clean up some uneven areas, okay? So, do you always have to use Beat Detective? No, absolutely not. You do not. It's just an area, it's just a tool to maybe help you if you have some uneven pieces in here. And it doesn't have to be drums, okay? You can use this with just about anything, all right? And it'll just help you clean up. Let me show you how to do it. And just guide you through the steps, okay? First thing you want to do when you go in here is you actually need to create some groups, okay? Because you want to treat this as a family, okay? So let's look, and I'm going to create a drum group, okay? Let's look at just, yeah, let's do the drums. So open this up a little bit just so I can see my drums. And my groups are going to be down here in the corner, all right? Move that out of the way. All right, right here, okay? Now, is there a drum group? Yeah, I didn't create it because it says D or B. That's useless. That should be B or a D for drums, okay, which I'll talk about in a minute, right? But there is a drum group. Let's see what's actually in it. Let's see if we can modify that. So now I am just looking to see what's in that group, okay? Scratch Mellotron. I don't want that in my drum group, okay? So drums, and this is for beat detectives. So I'm going to call it drums BD, okay? And I'm going to change the ID to, I want D, okay? Drums, 660, all of that, add, there's my group, okay? I want mix edit, should be all good. Follow globals, we are good. Okay, so there's my D drums group for BD, right there. Now, all right. First thing you do is create an edit group. All right, hopefully everybody knows how to do that. Command G, put your family of instruments in there, and that'll create that group, okay? Because we want to edit the instruments as a group, okay? Now, I say that, but we're getting ready to turn that off, all right? But I'll get there. Now, what we're going to do is we are actually going to set up and duplicate the playlist, because I don't want you cutting up your original audio if you don't like what Beat Detective does, okay? So first thing is, let's go, and I'm only going to do the kick drum here, really, but let's go ahead and I'm going to duplicate that playlist. All right, now what it did, because these are in a group, it created a new playlist all the way down, okay? And so on this, when you create your duplicate playlist, you will see the label 01. All right, do you see how it did that at the end? Okay. I tend, if I have time and I'm working with a client and they're going to see this, that's not the most professional thing. That doesn't tell them anything. So what I would do is I would go in here, double click, okay, and it'll bring up the change. All right, you can actually name your track. I would go in here and type comp, right? Because we're going to actually like comp these, or BD. Let's call it. Let's stay with our beat detective thing. Okay. Now what I would do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go from track to track and quickly just jump through and rename all of these. And how to do this quickly is command down. All right, or command down arrow, and that takes me from track to track. That way you don't have to hit next every time, okay? Command down, and that comes through here, and you can quickly, very quickly rename all of these, yeah? And that's it. And then once I'm finished, okay. And now I have all my duplicated playlist renamed to Beat Detective so that I can actually see what's happening, okay? This is a little bit more professional. It's just, Is it necessary? No, but people like to see that you've actually taken the time to work on their project and made it a priority. Okay. And I use BD for Beat Detective like that. Relabel your tracks to really whatever you need to really know the difference, but that's what I use. Okay. Now, when you're doing this, you want to make sure one thing about Beat Detective, it does not like cross fades. It doesn't like fades in general, right? Especially cross fades. So remove all the fades, okay, just in case. All right. Now, you want to make sure that you delete all these fades all at one time. All right. You do them one at a time, that's going to take forever. So what you can do is you can highlight everything, and then under Edit, okay, you will see Fades, Delete. And that will now delete all the fades just like that. Boom, boom, boom. Super easy, super convenient. All right. Now, next step would be to actually open Beat Detective. All right. And that is right here under Event. Event, Beat Detective. Okay. So let's open that up. And you're going to get this window. And this window kind of works left to right with a bunch of different steps as it goes. Okay. And you want to follow these steps in order. Okay. These we're going to work through each one of them. You start from the top and work your way down. This middle section, okay, these are your measures and time signatures, and then your subdivision. This is how, things are finely tuned. Okay. You want to make sure that, all of this is correct. Is your song in 4/4? Yes. And does it go all the way up to that area? Yes, that's what I have selected. So that's what comes in here. Okay. And then over here, like I say, is each of these steps, this is actually what you're going to do in that step. Okay. All right. Now, when you're up here, let me say this real quick. In your transport bar, you want to make sure that you're in grid mode, okay, up here, and you want 1 bar selection. See where that says 1 bar? Okay, you can change that. All right, bar, and then 1 bar. Okay, see that where it says like 1? Okay, and that way you can break it up and see it. There we go, 1 bar in grid. All right, yeah, that's the best way to do that. It's a good habit to select, a little bit before and a little bit after. I can't pick before because it's the beginning of my session, but I can go a little bit after. It's a good habit to do that. It's not necessary, but it's not bad, especially if you end up quantizing something, which is what we're going to do. It's a good habit. All right. So now let's go through the steps. Let's actually work our way through this thing. We're going to start at the very top and talk about bar beat marker generation. Okay. When you're going through here, okay, is it in 4/4? Yes. Do I have everything captured that I want to work on? Yes. So first thing you do is hit capture selection. All right. Now it is actually looking at what I want it to. Okay. And this is where you need to ensure that these numbers are the same. Okay, they are. All right. Time signature, everything's good. We're okay. All right. Now as it goes through, contains, let's look at this. Okay. You want this duration to match the shortest duration in your song. Okay. Most of the time, an 1/8 note is enough. 16th note, depending on how fast your song is, that type of idea. Okay. 16th note, 1/8 note, whatever you like. Okay. Both of those work pretty well. All right. Next, let's go over here. In your detection, leave this as normal. Okay, leave it as normal. You have some different options, but leave it as normal and leave this with enhanced resolution. Okay, enhanced resolution. Just let Beat Detective do all the work. All right, and what this is actually your audio filter through which Beat Detective listens to the audio. All right, this is how it actually listens to this. Okay, next step is click Analyze. All right. Now, when you do that, you'll notice that this down here, my sensitivity bar, became, activated. All right, it came on. All right. Now, what happens when I start to slide this fader, okay, you will start to see some cuts up here start to actually like populate my track. Okay, now so watch. See that? It's starting to actually like cut apart my clips based on my transients. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to continue moving this to where you've highlighted all the transient hits. Now that's overkill. That's of course way too much. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit and look at this. All right, and I'm mainly focusing on my kick track. All right, let's look at that. So this is low, 13%. You can see a bunch of transients that are not getting picked up. So let's start to raise this up slowly until my transients all start to get picked up. See that? I think we're about there. Yeah, because you can see it kind of flatten out and nothing's happening, right? Okay. See, if I go to beats, it puts me on a grid. I don't want that. All right. You actually want sub beats so that it gets everything in between. Yeah. So let's back that off until it really starts. There we go. Because you'll notice if I raise this up a little bit, like look right here. Look right here. Okay. There's nothing there. But if it's too sensitive, it starts to grab things on transients that are too small. Okay. So I don't want it that precise. So something about like that. That's not bad. Yeah, that's even better right there. Okay. That's what we want. So about 15%. You see it doesn't have to be very high. Okay. Now at this time, do not hit generate. Do not hit this yet. Okay. All right. Instead, what we're going to do is we'll start working our way down over here. All right. Now, you're going to skip groove template extraction, okay? Because you've already mapped out your beats using the identify beats, our command I. That's what this does, but when you do it by manually, it does a much better job than Beat Detective. So I actually like doing that better, okay? So, but we don't need this anymore. So let's jump down to clip separation. Now this one, what we're looking at right here is the trigger pad, okay? All right, you'll see that it added that to my screen. See that? Nothing there. Trigger pad, all right? This is what we're looking at. You want to set this to 12 milliseconds, all right? And I'll explain why here in a second, all right? Well, actually, we do this because of our crossfades, all right? And when we create a crossfade, which we will in just a second, this will split the sides of the crossfades, okay? This sets our maximum amount of our crossfade to 12 milliseconds. That's what this does. Now, with our trigger pad set, now we hit separate, okay? And what I want you to watch for up here is right now this is one clip. You'll see one name of my clip. It's actually a clip over here and a clip over here, two clips, right? But when I press separate, watch what happens. You'll see that every one of those transient markers now are in separate clips. Okay? That's what happens here. Okay? So now, as we're working our way down, we're going to move to clip conform. All right? Now, just keep it in standard. All right. Don't worry about strength, within and exclude and swing and all that. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry. Just listen. Okay. Keep it in standard, and then come down and hit conform. And now it's telling me that it can't conform because it's before the session. So I'm going to change this to measure 1. Okay. Now I'm going to hit conform, and it will ask me this. Okay. This operation will move clips to a new location. Is that what you want? Yes, it is. All right. So hit conform, and now you see everything kind of shift a little bit. And what it did is it now locked my tempo, my actual like kick drum, to my map, my tempo map that I did up here. It locked things into that grid. Okay. Don't worry, just not yet. Okay, because we're not finished. Now, if you look really closely, it moved a few things. Okay, not saying this is actually going to sound good, but this is what happens. It'll lock things based on my grid. All right, and you'll see that it creates gaps. All right, perfectly fine. Sometimes it shifts things over, sometimes it shifts things away. Okay, now if I left this as is, what am I going to hear at these gaps? I'm going to hear pops and clicks. All right, this is bad. You don't want this. So we have one more step to go. Edit smoothing. So we're going to click on this, and you will see that it's asking you fill gaps. Well, if you do fill gaps, it's just going to put silence here. But what you actually want is fill and crossfade. Now right here, we are going to change this to 6. All right, because 6 is now half of the trigger pad 12. All right, and no, this is going to split my crossfades, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. That's what's happening here. All right, and once you get here, go ahead, after you change that, click smooth. Now it smooths out everything in my file. All right, and it'll fill it in by creating all these 6 millisecond crossfades. Now, there may still be issues here, okay, but most of the time, if you're dealing with a straight ahead, just eighth note based quarter note song, this will fix a lot of issues, okay? But if you're dealing with a syncopated song or something like that, a funk with a lot of upbeats, this is when you don't want to use this, okay? But if you have a straight ahead like rock and roll song or something very on the beat, classical music type idea, okay, then this works great. If there are any issues, press play and listen to it. And if there are any issues, just fix them. All right, address them manually. All right, but this is how you do it. Now, good thing about all of this, like I say, it's completely non-destructive. Okay, so if you do this and you don't like what you hear, you can always just go back to the original playlist. Boom, there's my original audio. No Beat Detective, nothing on it, okay? This is why we created that duplicate playlist. And then now, here's all my Beat Detective cuts. All right, very quickly back and forth. You can compare, see what you like, see what you don't like, okay? Now, for me, for the midterm, for the final, all right, I want you to show me that you at least know how to do this, okay? You don't have to use it in your session. If you create this duplicate playlist and you just flip back and forth and show me, I'll be perfectly happy with that, okay? If you use it, great, yeah? If you don't, fine. Now, I did the whole song right there, okay? I just clicked the whole thing. You typically do not do that. You typically do it in sections. So you would look at just the verse or the chorus and just break that down by itself and do it like that, okay? You typically do not do the whole song like what I just did. I'm just trying to prove a point and show you how to do it. But that is how that works, okay? Hopefully no questions, all right? I'll put this stuff online. You can use it as a checklist and just work your way through, all right? So there's Beat Detective. Let's move on to sample replacement. Okay, so sample replacement. Now, I'm going to show you how to replace samples manually. Okay, there are plugins and things that you can buy, like Slade drums and things like that, that will do this for you, but those cost money. I'm going to show you how to do this manually, and it's free. Yeah, so good. Now, why do we do this? Why do we do this? When you listen to drums, okay, and if you do, you listen to you pay attention to things like kicks, snares, other elements, right? Sometimes some things may be a little thin, okay? Some things may sound better than others. Some may sound just too quiet, right? Maybe the mic was placed poorly or too far away, and you have a great sounding, you know, hi-hat, or your overheads sound great with your cymbals, but then your kick drum just sounds anemic. All right, well, we can fix that. Right, we can augment, we can complement all of this with samples. So let me show you how to do it. Now, first thing I want to do is, let me show you this. So when you go into Canvas this week, all right, the module week 7, you will see a drum sample folder. You will see a loop sample library. All right, these two things. I'll go ahead and release them right now, publish them. I want you to actually download those and keep those. Those are yours, okay? And in these, you'll see a bunch of like kick samples and snare samples, tom samples, all right? Things like that, okay? And so they're yours. You can use them. They sound really good. Let me show you what happens. Let me drag it over and show you. All right, you're going to get this folder. Now, hang on, let me move that out of the way. I don't want to see that. If I do that, that'll import everything into Pro Tools. Now, here we go. This is better. All right, so what do you have here? So now we have a window, and this is my drum sample folder, okay, right here. And you'll see kicks. So it has like a bunch of kicks in here, snares, a bunch of snares, toms, okay? Okay, hopefully you can hear those. All right, that 3 is not too bad. We'll use that for now, okay? But this is yours to keep. I want you to use it, okay? Now, first step when you're doing this, ensure that your samples are actually on their own track, okay? So let me import. I'm going to turn my drum group off, okay? And I'm going to put it right, for now, I'm going to put it right underneath it. When the time comes, I'm going to put it above it. Well, I guess I go ahead and put it above it. All right, I'm going to put it right here. Now I'm going to go into File, Import Audio. All right, it's on my desktop. Drum samples, kicks, 3. All right, now I want to make sure that I hit copy, not add, so that it actually creates an audio file in my folder. Okay, so there we go. It's going to ask me, do I want to add it to my audio files? Yes. All right, then it will ask me, where do I want to put it? I want it on a new track at the session start. Okay. There it is. Now, you don't really see anything yet because we're not zoomed in. It's right there. You see that? Because it's just a single hit. There we go. That's all we want. So first step is ensure that your sample is imported, all right, added to or copied into your audio files and on their own track. Now, next thing we want to do is we want to make sure to check the phase of each sample, okay? Now, what I mean by that, and if we need to fix this, we're going to fix it. All right. So I'm going to drag that over. I'll move it. I just want to compare phase for a second. Okay. So I'm going to drag this over. This is my kick. All right. So I'm going to drag it right above it. And now I am expanding so that I can see what goes where. And to check phase, I want up with up, down with down, up with up, and now up with up. And you want an average. Up with up. You see that? Down, kind of with down. Yeah, up with up, down with down. So that is showing me that my sample is going to be in phase with my microphone. That is good. All right. If this was backward, you would go into Audio Suite. All right. And it should be under Other. Yep, that's what I thought. And Invert right there. And that will flip the phase of that sample. Okay. That's the easiest way to do it. All right. Now, make sure if you do that, let me show you this. All right. Other, Invert. Where'd it go? Where is it? There it is. It will give you this. All right. You want to make sure that you have use in playlist and then you hit render. Okay. And then that way you can actually see. Well, I'm not going to do it because it's in phase. I don't need to fool with it. But that's what you would do. Use in playlist and render. And that'll invert that. Okay. Okay. Now, next one. On your sample, make sure that you create a fade in, just a gentle, it doesn't need to be long, and you need a fade out. So let's go to the end of our sample. I don't need my sample to be that long, so I'm actually going to shorten this up, and I'm going to add a fade out at the end. Okay? Make sure you do that so everything sounds nice and clean. All right. So create, like I say, create these fade outs so that your samples are nice and clean. All right. Now, you want to choose samples that complement really what's lacking in your tracks. Okay. Or, yeah, that's going to be your best option. Now, I would say that you can actually create like sonically different things with a unique edge by using really interesting samples. You can do that. You can do that. All right. You want to go that way. All right. Now, a pretty common thing here is that you actually can use multiple samples for each drum. It's not a one per one thing. You can actually have 3 different kicks. All right. You can layer 4 different snares. It's all about what sound do you hear in your head that you think would be best for that track. Okay. Experiment, be creative. All right. And what you're listening for is really for each sample's envelope. And what I mean, is it a long sample? Is it a short sample? That type of idea. Now you can see here in my kick, my sample is actually longer than what it is from beat to beat. Look at this, which is very anemic, and then look at this, which is much stronger. Now I could shorten this up. All right, something like that. Right, but I don't mind it going over a little bit because when I cut and paste, it's going to make a smoother transition. Okay. This, if I did something like this, I might have a click and a pop. All right. But I shouldn't with the fades, but just in case, it doesn't hurt to go a little over. All right. But what you're listening for is what I say, your envelope, your long and short. All right. Your frequency content. All right, does it actually sound good in that against the rest of the kit, and just overall personality of the sample. All right, you can choose all of that. All right, now let's actually go through the steps how to do this. All right, what you want to do is you need to create a group. Okay, Command G, for your sample and your kick track, okay? And you're going to need this group to cut and paste later using the tab to transient, which I'm about to show you, okay? So let's create our group first. There's just these two tracks. Command G, okay? And I'm going to call it drum sample. And I'm already using D for drums, so I'm actually going to use S for sample, okay? And hit OK. Down here at the bottom, you see it. There's my two, all right? Now, you want to make sure that your samples actually start at the edge of each region, okay? But you want to get rid of empty space in the sample, like you saw me do, just kind of clean it up a little bit, all right? And what I always do is I always put, and let me rename this. I'm going to rename this kick sample. All right, see that? Just so I can know. Extra space in there. Let me get rid of the extra space. There we go. Kick sample versus my kick, okay? Now, I always put my sample above my actual kick so I can see the difference, all right? Now, if you're doing this with the snare, you do the same thing. You put your sample above the snare so you can see it, all right? Now you have a visual cue for when you're copying, pasting your group samples, okay? If you have quantized your tracks, you would want to use grid mode, all right? But I haven't, so I'm going to keep it in slip, all right? And you want to make sure that your tab to transient, this first button, is on, all right? Now, once I put the cursor anywhere and click the tab button, it will roll over to the next transient, which is what I want, all right? Now, let me show you this. You want to copy and paste your sample as a group, including your original track, okay? So, I'm going to back this off a little bit, and I'm going to zoom in, because I want this to be as close as possible when the time comes. And I want, you see, my line is right on my original. That's what I want, okay? Now, with those two together, I am going to shorten this up because I don't want this. Oh, that's my fade. Put it in front of it, right there, okay? Let me grab that because I don't want to get into this. So now I am going to Command C, copy as a group, okay? And now what'll happen is that I hit my tab to transient, and now it'll jump to my next transient in that line, okay? Now what'll happen is I now paste. Do you see that? You see what's happening? And it is now jumping and taking those sample to sample. It is now putting my sample over my drum, okay? I'm going to hit tab till it takes me to my next transient. Paste. Tab, tab, paste, tab, paste. You see what it's doing? And now it is adding my sample to every time my kick drum is in there. See it? That's not a kick drum, that's bleed. So I'm going to skip over that and go to my kick drum. Oh, didn't want that. So now, what's happening there? Okay. Let me see if I can do this. Hang on. So I'm actually going to turn my group off, and I'm going to click I'm going to copy my sample, just my sample. Now, nope, okay. I have to turn it back on, and now, let's try this. Yeah. There we go. Now, it won't overdo. It won't overlap. See what I did there? So I copied just my sample instead of my sample and my original. And you can go through this really quickly and replace all of these samples, okay? You get the point, all right? And so now all of my drums have this backup sample that is complementing, okay? It's a little tedious, okay? But it becomes pretty automatic after you do it a little while. And you can repeat this operation with your snares, your toms, your cymbals, whatever that you actually have an actual sample for, okay? And once it's done, let's see if you can hear this. So I'm going to turn off my sample, just my kick drum. All right, let's listen to this. Hopefully you can hear that, but if you can't, it's really weak. It's really like bad, okay? But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my sample in with it. And now it actually adds a whole lot to my kick drum. And like I say, I just picked that random sound, okay? If you don't like that sound, pick a different sample, all right? It's whatever you as a producer really want in your track, okay? It doesn't have to be that boomy or ringy or whatever. It could be whatever you like, okay? And you don't have to use what I gave you. You can get a sample off a Splice or anything like that. And this is exactly the way it works. It does it all like this. This is how you would drop a Splice sample into your session. Just tab to transient, create this group, and then just cut and paste as you go through there, right? And you'll listen to how this really affects your work, whether you like it or not, okay? Last thing here I want to go over for today is your DAW configuration. What I actually want to see in your mix, okay? Now, I'm going to get rid of this. I don't really need this anymore. This was just an example. So let's delete all of this because it just doesn't matter. I don't need it, okay? And I'm going to delete this track because I don't need it, but typically you would not delete anything in Pro Tools because it gets rid of your undo history. But we don't need it, so I'm getting rid of it. All right, so now there we are. We're in good shape. All right, let me open everything up here so we can see it again. There we go. All right, tempo, I'm going to get rid of all of this. I don't need this anymore. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to minimize my tempo window, my ruler. Don't even really need it, so I'm going to get rid of it just to keep clear my space. I also don't need my comments on here. That's gone. Okay, clean that up. And I don't need to see my groups. Clean that up. Get rid of that. Here's my window. Full thing. All right, there's my whole session. Just cleaned it up really, really quickly so that we can talk about how this should be organized. All right. Now, I have routing folders. Let me close my routing folder so that we can talk about these. There we go. And that's like a rough mix. We don't need that, so I'm actually going to hide it. There we go. It's off of my main window. All right. There we go. Typical cleaned up session. Now, what do I mean by these organizational steps? All right. If you're working on a session and it's all you, all right, and you never share your sessions, you never, work with another person, then it doesn't matter. Then you can do whatever you want. It's not worth, me arguing with you about, well, that doesn't look right, right? It's yours. You can do whatever you want to with it. But if you work with other people, especially on a professional level, there are certain things that people expect. All right, they want to see a certain layout so they can find things quickly. All right. So let's say you receive a multi-track from another student, okay, and you open up the session and it's an absolute mess. All right, or a client. It doesn't have to be another student. It can be a client. Say you actually graduated from Berkeley, you finally have a job and you're working professionally. Okay, you're making some money doing what you love. All right, you receive a session, you open it up and it's a mess. Okay, you have no idea what's going on in that session. All the tracks are labeled audio. You have audio 1, audio 2. Every single instrument is out of order. Everything is confusing. All right. Now, I have seen people refuse to work with clients like this. They're like, no, that person knows nothing about what they're doing. I am not wasting my time on that. Okay. I've seen people refuse to work with people like that. And the truth about it all is that we as humans, we make assumptions based on first appearances. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it happens, okay? And so I want to make sure that you going out into the world, okay, you all live up to your full potential that I see in all of you, right? I want to make sure that you make a good first impression, okay? So let me give you a couple steps here to help you achieve and set up your sessions in a very professional organizational standard, okay? That way you can get plenty of jobs, plenty of work, make lots of money, spend your time having fun by mixing and making music rather than fighting with people and arguing with people and going through just a tornado of confusion, all right? So let me just give you a few little checklists here, okay? Now, the way I teach this whole organizational thing is by thinking about 2 days, all right? Let me come back over here. Sorry, so you don't need to see the Pro Tools screen for this for now. I want you to divide it up into 2 phases. You can think of it as day 1, day 2, or phase 1, phase 2, all right? So day 1 is all about prep. This is before you ever record anything. This is just about prepping your sessions and expecting what to see. All right. So step 1, you need to create and open a new session. So everybody understands how to create and open a new session. Okay. And when you do that, you're going to see a couple things. Actually, let me switch you over. Okay. Let's go back real quick. All right. So whenever you create a new session, you get this window. Okay. And a couple things here. Title, please name your session in a logical way so that anybody who opens it understands what they're dealing with. All right. So for example, for this class, I would want something like MP305, Hybrid Maverick, your name, your last name, your full name, whatever, definitely your last name, right? And then the date. All right. That's what I would want to see. That way, I see it on my session file. I know exactly who it is, what it's for, what class, and when. Everything I need to know about that session right there in your title, okay? Now, I want to talk about these things right here. All right, file type. You know you have WAV or AIFF. WAV is so much better, all right, because these two sound alike, but AIFF does not have time code. That means you can't sync it with video. WAV is better. WAV is the professional standard. Choose WAV. Sample rate. We have 6 main sample rates. And what we have here, 44.1 is the standard CD audio. Now that's an antiquated number. That's an old number, but based on what computers used to be able to do. Yeah, it's fine. It's not the best. 48 for the longest time was like the video standard. We actually use 48 more than 44.1 nowadays, but perfectly fine. Now 88.2, 96, these are doubles of these two. These are used more for like super audio and things like that. More for like if you're archiving things, all right? Now, way up here, these are triples, okay? These are doubles of this. I guess they're quadruples, all right? And we hardly ever use these, at least not in this field. We do, all right? Especially like 192. We use that a lot for like seismic activity and weather patterns and things like that. All right. We would use that, or 176 in like live broadcast. All right. Like for sports events, TV shows, and things like that. We do use these. Okay. But we don't really need them for this purpose. So 44.1, 48 is fine. All right. Bit depth, 16, 24, 32-bit float. This is based on your dynamic range. Okay, so every bit is equivalent to 6 dB of what you can actually record, all right, without distortion, and this sets your headroom, all right. 16 is like 44.1, it's an old number, but 16 times 6 is 96, all right, and so that means anything over 96 decibels in your session is going to record. That's not good. Your snare is louder than that, all right. 24 is better. This gives you 144 decibels up until your headroom. All right, that's better. 32-bit float you don't need to worry about. That's used for mainly major motion pictures. And what it does is it squashes your noise floor down and then your headroom up, so you get a bigger signal to noise ratio in the middle. You don't really need to worry about that because it takes up a lot of CPU. Any Cubase users, Cubase is automatically preset at 32-bit float, and then when you bounce, it bounces down automatically. All right, so you don't need to worry about that now. 24 is the way to go. Okay, and I/O settings, last uses the default. Okay, if you're always using the same session over and over and over, that's fine. Right now, this is a stereo mix, so I would probably pick stereo if you were on yours, if you're using like a public computer. Now, if you're at Berkeley, every room at Berkeley has its own I/O setting. So whatever room you're in, whether it be like, 150 building 116, room 116 or something like that, or 136 Studio F, right, where the class happens. Each room has its own I/O setting, and it will show up right here. Okay, you always want to use that if you're at Berkeley. All right, so that's our main window. All right. So, opening a new session. That's step one. All right. Set your sample rate, your bit depth, get all of that set correctly. Next one, create your tracks. Now, you always want to create and label your tracks correctly. Audio is not allowed. If I see anything labeled audio, you will lose points. It's the hallmark of an amateur, okay? This labeling is not descriptive, and it costs very valuable time to your mixer because they have to listen to the tracks to see what it is, all right? So when you create a track, all right, everybody knows the shortcut, hopefully, Shift-Command-N. And that's going to give you this window. Now, you could hit like 10 right here, hit create, and when you do, it's going to give you 10 tracks of audio. Audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, audio 4. This is awful. Don't do that, okay? Instead, keep this as 1, all right, 1, and rename the track right here. You know your instruments, you know what you're going to use in your session, rename it here. So kick, all right, right there. Then you can either hit your shortcut, Shift-Command-N again, and it gives you another track, and then you would keep going, snare, all right, Shift-Command-N, and then hit your tab button, and it'll take you straight to your name, all right, and then like Tom. You get the idea, all right? Toms, whatever. Or you can hit the plus button. See that? And each time you hit the plus, it gives you a new track, all right? You can absolutely, this is how you want to label and put in and create your tracks, right here with the name right off the bat, okay? That's how you want to do it. Next, every session needs to have a master fader, all right? You need a master fader on your edit window. Put it at the very bottom of your session, okay? We use it to watch and prevent your track peaking, All right. If you don't know how to do it, Shift Command N. You're going to get your new track window right there. Now, if you hit Command and then up and down arrows, you can search. That's how you go from, that's your shortcut quickly for new tracks. Now, we don't need a mono master fader. We need a stereo master fader. Holding down Command, hit your arrow right, and that'll give you your stereo. And there you go. Okay? That's a shortcut to create your master fader. You have to do that, and you want, when you're doing this, the reason what we're looking for is this clip indicator up here. All right, this red clip indicator buttons right there. Okay, very important during the mixing and mastering phases. To clear your clip indicators, if it does clip, the shortcut is Option C. All right, and that clears all your clip indicators. You can also clear them by just clicking on them. All right, whichever way, but Option C is usually a little bit faster. Now, if you don't know it, you can change your fader settings and your ballistics by hitting, I think it's Control click on the actual fader itself, and it'll give you a bunch of options on how to read your faders. These three down here are your ballistics. This is how your meter responds to your incoming signals. Okay, that's what that means. This changes the amount of headroom on how you read. Let me show you here, Rick. All right, so look closely at the numbers on my fader. So if I hit 12, see how those numbers change? It actually changes the amount of headroom that I can see up here on my track, on my fader, my VU meter. See it? See how it's changing my headroom up here? See it? Yeah? So up 20 gives me, just shows me a little bit difference on what's happening here. Well, now what are these big differences? K12 is more for mastering and limiting. All right, you don't need that. 14 really useful in rock and pop, and then more dramatic music like classical music where you have a lot of louds and softs. That's more your K20. Okay, you don't really need that. So what I recommend going through is usually Pro Tools Classic. All right, that's what most people are used to seeing, where you can see the different greens, the orange for your headroom, and your reds up at the top. All right. Now, the K meters, these, they have a little bit slower attack time, so they react a little bit slower to like your loud peaks. Okay. And what they do is they provide a more stable visual representation of your overall loudness. You don't need to worry about that so much right now. All right. So just keep it in Pro Tools Classic and you're good to go. All right. Now, next, whenever you're dealing with your audio files and your track labeling, please be as descriptive as possible. Okay. You may not have audio 1, 2, 3. All right. But drums 1, 2, 3 are not any better. Okay. That's not any better. The more descriptive, the better. Please take the time to label each track, and in your comments section, put in your mic type if you know it, and maybe the placement. All right, any information that you can give there. Say things like, be descriptive, be specific. Say things like floor tom, snare top, snare bottom, crash, rod, things like that. Okay, very, very useful. Next, in your session, in your folder, I want you to create an old session folder. Let me show you what I mean by that. All right, so if I'm over here, and I have this, all right, so this session is right here. Right here, okay? Now, if I go into something else, all right, let me show you something. All right, so right here, here's another session I'm working on for another client. And you'll see that it's a bit too much. All right, here's your default. Let's just go with this. It's just a basic test session, okay? When you create a new session, it gives you an audio files folder, a session backup files folder, the name of your Pro Tools file, and then your wave cache. Okay. Now, anytime you do something significant to your session, you should be saving it as and renaming it based on what you did. Okay. Like test 101125 added tracks, whatever you want, something like that, right? And when you're doing this, you want to do a save session as, all right there. And that'll allow you to rename your session, okay? And then whenever you do that, you want to make sure that you're putting it in the right spot, all right? And it'll come up and it'll go here. It'll go directly on this page. Well, now you have multiple Pro Tools files. That's not good, all right? You don't want to see multiple projects right here because you don't know which one to pick from. So what you do is you actually go in here and you create an old sessions folder, all right? And everybody knows how to create new folders, right? And then at the end of the day, whenever you're finished working, if you have saved it as something new, which I hope you have, right? Then you're going to carry and move your old sessions into this folder. That way you only see the one you're actually working on. It keeps things organized, and if you're sharing this file with somebody else, they know exactly which one to work on, all right? Now, I highly suggest using a date stamp on your projects, all right? Always put the date that you're actually working. So this means you're going to create a new save as every day because it's going to have a new date at the end of it, okay? Now, some people don't add dates to the title because there's a date stamp in there, right? But you have to search for it. And I have seen just adding the date at the end of your session save a lot of time during a recall, all right? This will help keep things organized, all right? So create that old session folder, all right? Now, next one is learn to use your session file backups for sure. Understand what these mean, okay? This folder is meant to help keep all your older iterations of your sessions, okay? If something goes horribly wrong or you lose power and your computer dies, you can always come back to this and grab these older sessions, okay? Now, you can adjust these, right? It's in, if you go into your folder, your settings, and then you'll see this, your preferences. It's under operation, all right? Right here. Auto backup right here, okay? You can turn this off, but please don't do that, okay? And the default is 10 and 5. This is good. It's not bad. This I like to usually do a little bit higher, like 25, something like that. And there you go, right? You can. This goes actually all the way up to 999, but that's a bit overkill. You don't need that much, all right? 10, 25, whatever. The default is usually pretty good, but you do have control over that, okay? Now, next one for me, I like to see as much of my screen as possible, all right? So if I'm working on this right here, like this is usually the biggest one, tracks, groups. If I don't need to see it, this takes up a lot of real estate. I close it. I don't need to see it. Same way here. I don't need instruments, inserts, IOs. I don't need comments. Look how much of my screen now is wasted with all of this. And the thing about this is that all of that information is in my mix window. So all I can do is hit Command equal, and there it is. All right. And this is where I'll keep it. I don't need it here. So I maximize my screen and arrangement windows. So this is what I want to see. Same way over here. I don't need to see my clips list. All right. If I'm not using it, I close it. It's right there. And so that way I can actually maximize my screens. Okay. Because I want to see as much of that as possible. So I do that. I try to get the most out of my monitors. But it's up to you and your workflow. Next, monitors. Okay. Or markers. Let's talk about markers. Please add markers for every section and important point in your session, okay? Look for verses, choruses, bridge, solos, etc., all right? And to do that, make sure your marker window is open, all right? It's going to be right there. You can turn that off, it's gone, but please open it and use it, all right? So very useful, okay? Now, you can add markers by adding the plus, all right? Or you can hit function return. If on your laptop, you can just hit function return. If you have a numeric keyboard, you just hit enter, and that's how you do it. Now, I recommend going in here into your settings and randomizing your marker colors. It's going to be under display right here. All right? Yeah? So make sure those are on there. Tracks, I typically do track type. All right? Groups, fine, track type of idea, and you can do that. Now, whoever put the markers on this section wasn't me. Beforehand, did not have that checked. And that's why they all look the same color. They look very bland. They're not helpful. But let me show you this. Now that I have it checked, if I add a marker, okay, watch how it changes my colors. Yeah, see that? That's what randomizing that color is about. See, that makes it very, very useful, okay? That's the way you should do it. Now, unfortunately, this was created beforehand, and I'm not redoing it. All right, but recommend randomizing your marker colors. Okay. Everybody knows how to import and copy your audio, right? So that you know, use copy all, not add all. Okay. Yeah. Everybody knows that you're going to need reference mixes. All right. Now, if you add a reference mix, that reference mix goes to the very top of your session. It goes up here, okay? And you want to pick songs that your competition. That way you can mix with your competition in mind, all right? Now, they are mastered, all right? So they're going to be about 10 dB louder than your tracks. And what you want to do to fix that is I'll just pick a random one right here, right? So you want to add the plugin. It's a trim plugin, and it's going to be here under other. See that? Where is it? No, instrument. Should be under other. I'm just missing it. There it is. It's a mono plugin. That's why I didn't show. All right. So it's going to be under other, or you can search for it. All right. Hit search. It'll open. Type in trim. There it is. Okay. Now, when this opens, you want to set this gain to -10. This is the easiest way to do it so that you can just leave it and forget it. Now your reference mix will match the level of what you're trying to mix. Okay? It's like apples to apples. That way you can keep the levels about the same. This is the easiest way to do it instead of moving your VU meter. Okay? I highly recommend this is the way you do it. All right? And so that should do that. Take that off of there. Okay? All right, so add that trim for your reference max. Now, let's talk about track order. This is an important thing. This is probably the biggest issue that I see a lot of times. You organize your multi-track in a way that it's very easy to navigate, okay? And depending on how your tracks are labeled, you may need to mute and unmute each track, to determine which one is which. Once you figure it out, relabel your tracks accordingly, okay? At the top, like I say, your reference mix, okay? After that goes your drums, all right? And let's talk about the drums, all right? There is an order for drums, all right? So what you typically want are the kicks at the top, okay? Followed by your snares. This one's out of order, so let me drag the snare. Snares there. Then your toms, okay? And then your overheads, and then your rooms. This is the typical order for a drum organization. All right. And you know, drums are subdivided. Snares go together, toms go together, cymbals go together, etc. Okay. After you have your drums, okay, after you have your drums in a session, all right, what typically goes underneath your drums would be your percussion, all right, percussion if you have any, then your bass, all right, rhythm section always goes at the top. After that comes usually your guitars, okay, so I'm going to move that keyboard down there. Next comes your guitars, and your order of your guitars doesn't really matter. Acoustic guitar, electric guitar, doesn't matter. You can see that there's a lot more electric guitar than acoustic guitar, or you can go alphabetical. Doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Yeah, it's based your workflow. People are not really going to mind that much on your guitars. Okay. Next would be your keys and your piano, synths, anything like that. And if you had them, your horns, strings, that type of idea, that would come underneath here. And then at the very bottom comes your vocals, all right? And when you open up your vocals, your lead vocal will be above your background vocals, okay? Yeah, that's a typical way you want your session organized. And then, of course, master at the bottom, all right? Now, keep in mind, this is not an exact science, and some people won't get too mad at you if they have to waste a lot of time, but some people will, okay? And you want to be as professional as possible, so this is an industry standard. You have some freedom when it comes to organizing your sessions, especially with some of those inner instruments, but try to stick to these conventions as much as possible, all right? Now, a few little things here. Use groups, create groups, okay? You want to use groups, create these groups so that you can treat your families of instruments at the same time, all right? Drums, you want to keep everything locked in, you want to adjust everything together, all right? If you hit the mute button, you mute them all. This is what you want. And be sure and label your groups as descriptively as you did for your tracks, all right? And then, you know, use your track colors. You can see in my session, like, all of my drums are one color. All of my guitars are one color. All of my vocals are one color. All right. It just makes these visual cues very easy to navigate. That's the only reason we do these. Okay. That's why they do that, to make it easier on anybody we work with. All right. Now, day 2, let me start to wrap this up a little bit. Couple things here when it comes to day 2. All right. So now you have your session set up. All right. Let me switch you over. Okay, yeah. So day 2, you have your session set up. You have gone in, you've recorded all of your audio, everything is laid out. You are now ready to mix. All right, so let's talk about a few like mixing organization things. Number 1, start with your rough mix. This starts with just your balance and your panning. You're thinking about your dynamic considerations, that type of idea, because your volume can definitely shape what you want your listeners to feel. Okay, and you don't want things creating friction against your lead vocal, so start with your dynamic consideration, your balances, and then start to work on that imaginary stage, spreading things out based on your panning. Okay, that's like step 1 of everything you're dealing with. Okay, and make sure things are complementary. If you put something over here, make sure and balance it out over here. Okay, next thing would be your rough mix gain staging, okay? And when you're doing, you know, just early mixing, okay, you want to anticipate your loudest parts and make sure that you watch your master fader for the peaks, okay? Now, when you're mixing, you want to keep it around minus 10 dB so that you have about 10 dB of headroom for your mixing, your mastering engineer to actually work, okay? If you will probably distort somewhere down the line if you have less than that, okay? Now, make sure that when you're doing this, leave your master fader at 0, okay? And then bring all your other tracks down until you actually get that -10 peak, that average on your master fader, all right? So that's what you're looking for in this. Now, when you're dealing with this, there's a couple things. I told you about the trim plugin, but you also have control over what's called clip gain and volume automation. All right. If you automate, if you don't have to, all right, if you automate, save it to the very end. All right. Make sure you have everything else, all your sounds, all your complementary parts and your panning. Make sure all of that is done first. And then when you're almost finished with it, then you can automate like your ins and your outs and your fade ins, your fade outs, things like that. Then you can automate that stuff. All right. But I would recommend learning how to use clip gain. All right. Now, if you're unfamiliar with clip gain, let me show you this real quick. Whenever you're looking at a clip, okay, each clip will have a little fader in the corner of it. Do you see that? Now, you have to turn that on, all right? But that is your clip gain, all right? If you click on it, you get the little fader that comes up, and you can turn just those clips up or down, all right? And that way you're not automating it, and it's easy to use. It's super easy, okay? And I think the let's see, is it? All right, so you can do that. I don't want my +10, so I'm going to take that back to 0. Okay, there we go. There we go. Close enough. But thing about this, like if you look at clip gain, all right, you can also, let me show you first. View clip, clip gain. See it right there. So you can do info, that's your fader, or you can do line. That gives you like an automation line. And you can go in with your pencil and actually draw in the automation on how you clip gain that one clip. All right. Whichever way actually works for you. Okay. All right. Now, what's the difference between using clip gain like this versus just turning down my channel fader? All right. Well, clip gain, they both, and channel fader, they both control your volume up and down. Yes, they are essentially the same if the track doesn't have any processing on it. Okay, that's the big thing. If you don't have any plugins on it, the key with clip gain is that it's pre-fader. It happens before your plugins. Okay, whereas your volume fader, your VU meter down at the bottom, or your volume fader, that is post-fader. So that just controls your final what comes out of that track. You get a different effect using either clip gain before all the plugins, before the compression, before the EQ, versus your VU meter, which is after. Okay, you're going to get a very, very different effect. Okay, all right, so almost finished here. All right, hopefully everybody knows how to create a send. All right, a stereo aux track. All right, and I want you to use those, your buses, for effects, things like reverb, compression, delay. All right, hopefully everybody knows how to do that. If you don't, let me know and I'll show you how to do it. All right, but when you're going through here, another big thing, another big step here that you want to do is you want to get rid of dead air and you want to add fades. Okay, you always want to make sure, and let me switch over. You always want to make sure that all of your clips have fades on them everywhere, in and out. All right, you see that. See those? All right, you definitely want that. And you want to get rid of dead air. All right, stuff in between your sessions where there's just nothing there. All right, you want to clean those up for sure. All right, and why do we do that? Is because if I left that there, that silence still eats up my CPU. All right, even though we don't hear anything, it's actually bogging down my computer. All right, so we just get rid of that. We can very, very quickly edit out dead air, add a nice tight little fade. All right, You can use strip silence, batch fades, Command F, and it very, very quickly you can like just go right through there. Okay. Now, if you are sharing your clips with somebody else, make sure you consolidate your clips. All right. So if I look at this, all right, here's my whole session. Now, if I export this and I send it to somebody else, say like a Logic person or, you know, at Ableton or something, when they go to import this in their session, all of this is just going to slam to the beginning of my track. This is not going to show up. It's not going to be placed properly. So what you want to do before you export your audio is you want to make sure you consolidate it. All right, and how you do that, let me show you. You just highlight everything on that track, making sure that you go all the way to the beginning. That's the key. Doesn't really matter where you end, but it's very, very important that you consolidate to the beginning. Okay? And what you want to do here is it's under track, or is it edit? Edit. It's under edit, okay? And you'll see consolidate clip. Now watch what happens with my clip. It will now make one file that covers all of the audio to the beginning of that track. Boom. Now, when whoever imports it into their session, everything will line up exactly where it needs to be. Okay? You want to consolidate all of your tracks like this before you ever share your session with somebody else. Okay? It's completely non-destructive, Command Z. I don't need that right now. Okay? And then last two little things here, and I'm going to let you go. If you're not the most organized person, and I'm not pointing fingers, okay? If you're not the most organized person, I recommend having a mix log, all right? And you can use this little checklist, what we've talked about today, as your template, okay? Did I do this? Check. Did I do this? Check. Did I consolidate? Check. Did I use markers? Check. Did I create my groups? Check, right? You see what I mean? You can do all of that. Whatever helps you to stay organized and actually go through and have a completely professional looking session at the end of the day, all right? And this concept for you, for each person that uses it, it will evolve, all right? It will evolve, and it'll be based on your session, and it'll be based on your workflow, all right? But you really should create like a master list of steps to help you generate a new form for each session, okay? And that will definitely help you, all right? And then finally, last thing I can't say over and over and over is just save often, save, you know, back up your work. And when you're doing this, think about your titles, your save as, and you want to normal your sessions, okay? Let me show you what that means, okay? You want to normal your sessions at the end of the day before your final stage, all right, save. And that way, whenever you open it or somebody else opens it, you see an expected thing, all right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close all of my routing folders, okay? And now I'm going to hit Option A so that I see my session start to finish on the screen. Then I'm going to hit Control Option Command down. And that's going to even up all of my tracks and fill up my entire screen. All right. Then, last step, I'm going to hit Return so that my cursor goes back to 0. That way, when I open it, I can press the space bar and go. There we go. That session is now normaled. All right. Then I'm going to hit Command S and save it at the end of the day. I'm also going to hit Command Save As, or Save Session As, okay? Shift Command S. And at the end of the day, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it like 101125. Yeah? I'm going to save it. You'll see the new name up here. That's what I'm working on. Then I'm going to go to my Finder window, okay? And now you will see 2 sessions. See that? I'm going to move my old session, the one I was just using, into my old session folder, so that now the one I open up tomorrow is the last one I saved. There we go. That's the way it works. So, a lot of information going on in this lecture, okay? I would have never been able to get through all of this in a class in 2 hours, right? I don't even know how long I've been talking here. But this is everything except the Melodyne session. So hopefully all of this is good and makes sense. Some of it should be review. Some of it may not be, all right? All good. It's all good. If you have any questions about it, of course, let me know. And like I say, once I get the Melodyne license straightened out, I will then do a separate, much shorter lecture on Melodyne. All right? Everybody have a good week, and I will see you on the 24th, okay, in class with your Hybrid Maverick presentation. All right? Have a good one, and I will see you soon. All right? Take care.